So today we're going to be talking about TV advertising and how Seed Health used it to unlock more growth. We'll start off with just a few intros. My name is Austin Santino. I'm a senior client development manager at Tatari. If you're not familiar with Tatari, we are a platform for the modern TV marketer. And so we help brands like Seed buy and measure TV from a performance mindset. I'll pass it over to Dipti.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dipti Janveja. I lead growth marketing at Seed Health. If you're not familiar with Seed, we are a microbiome science company pioneering innovations in probiotics. Our most well-known consumer product is DSO1, which is a 2-in-1 pre- and probiotic focused on driving whole body health.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Dipti. So to kick things off, I'd love to learn what initially spurred Seed to test TV for the first time.
Yeah, so like many direct-to-consumer brands, we were and are still heavily invested in Meta as a source of acquisition. And while Meta will always be core to our acquisition strategy, we wanted to diversify our media strategy and expand into new channels. And we saw TV as an opportunity to do that as well as reach new audiences.
Got it. Diversification is definitely something we hear from brands when they're looking to launch TV specifically. I think what maybe makes it a little bit more scary than testing other channels is it feels like it's just for big brands, right? You think TV advertising, you think Geico, State Farm, et cetera. So I'm curious, when Seed was getting ready to launch, did that resonate at all? Were there any initial concerns?
Yeah, that was definitely a consideration. I mean, I think we have a pretty high tolerance for testing at Seed, which we're very fortunate. It's very encouraged. That said, we worked with Tatari to develop a crawl, walk, run approach where we were really able to enter advertising on TV based on our own comfort levels. And there's a perception that you have to start with really large budgets, but the way TV has evolved, there's actually a lot of opportunity for you to enter it with smaller budgets and measure it from a performance standpoint to understand if it's working and then determine how to scale it, just like you would with any other performance channel. And that's what we did.
Yeah, I think, traditionally marketers view TV as something you have to push 7, 8-figure budgets into to figure out whether or not it's working or really to come away with any learning. But as platforms have really started to evolve and you can measure things more from an outcome perspective, right, it's really allowed brands of all shapes and sizes to launch tests at more feasible budgets. Cool. Moving on, when would you say is the right time for a brand to start considering TV?
Yeah, so I don't think that there's a perfect time. What worked for us might not be the right time for another brand. You probably want to make sure a couple of things happen, and they can be good indicators that you can start to expand. The first is you want internal support and alignment. So testing into a new channel, there's always a chance it won't work. So you have to be prepared for failure. You need some level of resources internally. TV requires creative that is different than what you can run on other channels. You can't just put a photo up or a static ad up. And you need some way to understand and measure impact, whatever that is. For what it's worth, we are on a last touch attribution, which is not the ideal way to measure TV, and we're still finding success there. And then beyond that, I think you need to understand that there's been some resonance of product market fit or you have to know your USPs, what's going to resonate with the target audience and where to find them, and if TV is the right place. And if those things all kind of make sense, then it's definitely worth dipping your toes in the water.
Got it. So having a strong understanding of your customer as well as the type of messaging that's going to resonate with them. Right, so kind of using more clickable media early on to get those learnings prior to launching, something that will help.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. In terms of grading success, from initial launch to growing the campaign, what are some of the main KPIs you're using to grade the success?
Yeah, so we are very much a performance marketing first company. All of our budget has to back into a blended CAC that matches with our targets and our goals. And so we measure TV just like we would any other media channel, which is based on a CAC basis or how it backs into that. So we're looking at CAC, we're looking at CPA in Tatari's marketing platform to understand how to triangulate between the two, but ultimately we're still measuring TV the way we would any performance channel.
Got it. I think one thing that would be helpful for people to understand is just kind of linear and streaming, or really how do we define these things, right? So streaming is your Rokus, your Peacocks, a lot of the OTT, CTV providers, whereas linear is broadcast, cable, can be viewed as a little bit more traditional. What a lot of marketers don't realize is that about half of the scale or viewership in TV is still in linear. And that's quickly changing, right? It's changing as we speak. So when you think about that for Seed, are you currently active on both streaming and linear? Is it just one? How do you think about how they work together?
Yeah, so when we started on streaming only, and that was appealing to us because you can be more targeted about with your audience. And so we wanted to intentionally test into TV by targeting our core audience and using that as a mechanism to prove out that TV could be a viable channel for us. We pretty quickly did see success. And so within 4 weeks of launching TV, we were able to expand into linear. And we've been on both since. We do skew more heavily linear because we found more success and scale there, but we invest across both.
Got it. So starting with streaming and then expanding to linear for more scale.
Yeah, I think that's also that idea of TV being scary. It feels a little less scary if you start with streaming.
Yeah, a little bit more digital-like for performance marketers. Cool. Would you be comfortable giving us an example of a streaming campaign that performed well?
Yeah, so when we chose to launch, we aligned the launch of our streaming or TV and on streaming with our peak season. So for the supplements business, peak season is actually Q1. It starts at the beginning of January or the very end of December after Christmas. Not like your traditional e-commerce where you lean into Black Friday and that time period up to Christmas. So we launched TV the week after Christmas to capitalize on the demand that we knew was inherent for our category and use that to find success. And like I mentioned, we found success pretty quickly in that we were able to use the performance we saw in streaming to justify expanding into linear.
Interesting. That sort of post-holiday Q1 is such a great time for health-focused advertisers, right? When you think about a lot of the brands probably that are in here, they're really heavying up for holiday sales, et cetera. And then when they start to pull back, it really gives you that opportunity to really prime the pump, right, for that peak Q1. And media pricing is much lower as a result. In relation to streaming, would you be able to describe a campaign that works similarly across linear TV?
Yeah, so this one came as a little bit of a surprise, but it wasn't planned. But when we expanded into linear, as we were testing into new networks, we were testing across a wide variety of categories, and we invested some money in advertising on the tennis channel, which might not always be widely watched, but it happened to coincide with the Indian Wells tournament in California. And so as viewership skyrocketed, we found that seed ads seemed to really resonate with the consumers or the people watching that tournament. And so we kind of saw like a little blip, and we looked into it and we discovered that it was driven by the tennis channel. So the next week we actually chose to heavily invest there, and we were basically able to double overall conversions driven by TV week over week as a result of that. And so the insight for us was really that there are tentpole moments that are going to align really well with our audience, and if we can lean into those, we can drive a lot of success.
There's definitely something really special about those larger tentpole airings, right? It's the type of impression that really makes your brand seem even bigger than it really is. So it's not necessarily where I'd tell everyone to start. Don't test your first ad in a major sports. It's very pricey, right? But at the same time, if similar to Seed, you could use data to really justify the test, and something that really tends to work. So when you're tracking success and you're meeting with your Tatari team or with internal stakeholders every week, what are some of the favorite views or products you're using in the Tatari platform?
Yeah, so the Chitari platform makes it really easy, I think, to track performance. I can log in today and look at how things performed yesterday. And while there's a long tail and data has to mature, it directionally gives me a sense of like what's working, what's not working. Was there a lift from a specific spot? How much was that lift? So the data is pretty robust. So while we are measuring success overall against CAC or CPA in the platform, I think there are some really meaningful insights we use from the Tatari platform, such as we can look at what was the response rate, was it high, was it low, and then how did that coincide with conversion rate? So do we see a high response rate, a low conversion rate, which means maybe we have to optimize something on our end with the landing page or the experience. And converse, we can see if the response rate was low, but the conversion rate was high, which means like, hey, this ad didn't really resonate with everyone. Is there a particular network or rotation on which it did well? And how do we optimize the way we allocate our media and the way we distribute our creative, and really lean into those optimizations to help us understand how we really make the channel perform.
So it's really about using almost like digital like or performance mindsets to optimize an upper funnel channel.
Yeah, that's right.
Interesting. And how about outside the Tatari platform? Since you've launched TV, have you noticed any other like incremental changes to the business, performance on other channel trends, et cetera?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways we've measured the impact of TV. The first is that while we can't determine like, okay, how many clicks or visits did exactly Tatari drive, between the Tatari platform and we use a post-purchase survey where we gather basically from our consumers or people who purchase where they discovered Seed. And since launching TV, we've always had a baseline of customers who've picked TV even before we were advertising on TV. But since launching TV, we've seen a 6 or 7x increase in what that looks like as a result of the amount of investment we're making, which feels pretty comparable. In addition to that, we have seen increases in brand search and direct traffic that we believe is attributable to our TV advertising and lines up with the post-purchase survey data that we're receiving.
So not necessarily the metrics you use to justify the channel, but something that as a result of just the added upper funnel, it's been a big benefit to the brand.
Yeah, and we've been able to then say, okay, like if we were to take that percentage of subscribers that we believe came from TV as a result of what we're seeing in the post-purchase survey, what would our CAC look like if we were measuring the CAC versus relying on Tatari to measure the CAC?
Got it. Well, I know we're almost at time, so to close things out, I'm sure people in the room would enjoy just, if someone is considering launching on TV for the first time, what would be sort of the advice you'd pass their way?
Yeah, I think I articulated this earlier when we talked about was it scary to launch in TV. You obviously want internal alignment and support and resources, but I think beyond that, it doesn't have to be scary. So you can start with pretty small investments. And we only commit to budgets 2 weeks out right now. We map it out, but we're only committing to how much we're spending every 2 weeks and then adjusting based on the performance. So you can work in a pretty tight window to make it work for you. So don't be scared to try it out and see if it can be successful for your brand.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Right, I think we're going to open it up to a few questions, if anybody has any.
So, I'm sorry. So the question was, what is our monthly spend and how do we rotate between the spend between different media sources? So I can't disclose what our monthly spend is. I will say that it is significantly grown. It's in the 6 figures, and we are currently our media is spread across probably like all of the usual suspects. So Meta, paid search, affiliates. We have a pretty large ambassador influencer program. TV is amongst one of the largest investments. So after Meta and search and kind of influencer and like some of these that have been core to our business, TV is the one that we've scaled the most and grown the fastest and has become like a significant part of that.
How long did it take you to see a ROAS that you were
Yeah. We're still refining, I think, and perfecting our methodology there. And I think measurement is always a continual evolution. We are in a place probably where it took us about 6 weeks, where we the time period between when we launched streaming and we made the decision to go live and linear. We had already started to see a positive CPA, and even when we extrapolate that, because there's always platform-based CPAs and what you think of internally as a brand. So even when we extrapolated that, when we looked at the post-purchase survey data, and we started to back into okay, what is our our LTV to CAC ratio against what our benchmarks are? We probably started to achieve it by the end of the first month in which we were in linear. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but what we have seen is that when we have found, the question was, I'm forgetting. The question was, is it more important to test the rotations and the placements or the creative? So we started out with 4 different creative concepts, and one of the creative concepts that we launched in December is still our best performing creative. So I think it's really important to find creative that works for you. Once you find that creative and it's performing at the level you want, then I think you can really start to hone into, okay, what networks? At the beginning, it's a little bit of you don't know, is it the creative or the network driving it? So once you can figure that out, then you pick the one that's working and you test into the next.
Sorry, I had a follow-up question, if that's all right. How did you define what the 4 creative routes were going to be? Did you borrow from your meta learnings, or how did you establish it?
Yeah, so we worked really closely with our creative, and we have a pretty robust internal creative and brand team, and so we worked with them. We made the decision to launch TV very quickly, so we didn't have a dedicated TV shoot, so we had to pull from existing media and kind of pull it together into it. So we looked at kind of key concepts and themes that were important to us as a company that we've seen resonate with consumers, and we used that to inform the concepts we were using.